Hello, everybody. Welcome to our CakeFu Master Series. I am excited to welcome you guys all here today. Thank you for joining us. We love to have you guys here on CakeFu. It's always fun. Today we have a really awesome guest. She is so fashion forward, I guess you could say. She has her website, Hey There Cupcake. And I think everybody in the world knows about Hey There Cupcake. If you don't, you should. So we are very, very happy to have Stevi Auble here today with us. Welcome, Stevi.
Thanks, Amelia. It's good to be here.
We wanted to talk about wafer paper flowers today. This is like the big trend right now, and I know I did one training a few weeks ago on wafer paper. And it was fun. It was really cool. But Stevi here, she has a Craftsy class on it, and she knows a lot about these wafer paper flowers, and is definitely the expert when it comes to wafer paper. So yeah, thank you so much, Stevi, for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's talk about you a little bit first before we move on to the training portion. Before we do that, I wanted to let you guys know about, we do have a Craftsy discount that I wanted to let you guys know about. Here we go. I have to put it up here really fast, sorry. I didn't get it up fast enough. Here we go. All right, so there's a discount link right here, guys. If you want to go ahead and check out the discount for Stevi's Craftsy class today. It's for the next 24 hours, so hurry and go ahead and check that out. It's a 25% discount, so we always love a discount, right? And also, we are going to be giving away one of Stevi's Craftsy classes today. So if you haven't already signed up for the giveaway, make sure you do that. It will be closing within about a half hour. So right on the hour, the entry thing will close. And so make sure you go and enter, get in all of your entries. And that's just down below this screen. There's a little place to go and enter that giveaway. So make sure you go and do that. You have 30 minutes to do that if you haven't already. So, okay. So back to you, Stevi. Let's start with, how about you just let us know how you got started, where, everything about you, about why you got into cake decorating. I know you had, a career before cake decorating. So
I did, yeah. I think my cake story is very similar to so many people's, where you just kind of fall into it, and that's really what happened to me as well. It's been, I guess, going on 4 years now. Previous to that 4 years, I was in the interior design industry, and that's definitely where I thought I would have been my rest of my career. But the lovely economy in 2008 changed significantly, and the design firm I was working for actually went out of business, and I found myself at home, a stay-at-home mom, essentially. And I think we all know as creative people that can sometimes maybe not be the best fit for us. Obviously, I love being home with the kids, but I also love to create as well. So I had to find something that I could do, to kind of marry the two together, because I had a really good thing going at that design firm with me working part-time. So I just happened to be making cupcakes, really, for my youngest preschool class a lot, and I was bringing them in quite a bit, and the director at that school kept telling me, you need to sell these, and I thought that was kind of the strangest idea, because I hadn't had a love for baking previous to that, so I couldn't imagine having a business was something I wasn't necessarily passionate about, until I got to the point where cupcakes kind of went crazy, and you started seeing all these really decorative, really pretty cupcakes, and I started kind of just trying my hand at that, and that's the part that I really just found this big attachment to, wanting to decorate. So I took a leap of faith really in 2010 and opened Hey There Cupcake, which is it's still special order catering stuff. and did cupcakes for like a year and a half, and then it kind of transitioned more into cakes, giving a bigger palette to play with and decorate with, and that's been essentially my business now is about almost 100% just cakes. So.
Awesome. Well, and you can tell that you have that design background because it really shows in your work, and I think it's really nice to see your work and see that you just have this style that it's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I try to look more because I still love design very much, and so when I'm looking for inspiration or cake designs, like I try to look more on like that side of things, which may seem strange to look at a living room for cake inspiration, but I do try to keep myself still in that world as much as possible, because that's where I find, that's what speaks to me.
Yeah. Well, here's a cake today that this is wafer paper, guys. This is so cool. This really allows such cool techniques, and this is part of the stuff that you're going to be showing us today, right?
Yes. Yeah. The 3 elements on there. There's a little ruffly flower, and then a round flower, and then a bow, which I haven't shown the bow before, so that'll be something new.
That's really, really cool. So yeah, these are things you're going to be able to find on this training today. It's really, really cool stuff. And we need to jump right into it so that we can get to it. But I wanted to let you guys know that for the bow, there is a template for it that we have down below the screen. There's a link to that template that you guys can go on and grab. And also, I wanted to let you guys know that we have some wafer paper that these colored wafer papers are sometimes hard to find. You have to either print them yourself, or you can actually get them from Stevi from her website. So I'm going to pull up that real fast. This is a link to Stevi's wafer paper link, so you can go on and check out her wafer paper prints that, like the ones here with this cake that she'll be showing you today. So, okay, and then we will just go ahead and let Stevi go ahead, and you can show us your demonstration. Let us see all that you have to show us. It's a lot today. So.
Okay, yeah, so hopefully we can get through it all. But we're going to start with the bow first, and like you said, the template's there for them to print out. I would print it out on cardstock, so you have something a little bit more stable to work with. And just with the pieces, I'm going to take this really fancy tool. That's actually a skewer that I just cut down and then kind of rubbed the point a little bit so it's a little bit more blunt and not as sharp. And that's what I'm going to actually use to trace out my template here. And I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Very cool. We actually have someone here asking, is wafer paper, is it edible?
It is edible. It doesn't have much of a taste to it. It just essentially melts in your mouth if you were to eat it. And everything we use with it, we're going to be using piping gel. And so even, obviously that's edible too. So they definitely could be eaten. I don't often see that my clients do eat them. Kids tend to.
Yeah,
but
kids will eat anything.
Yeah, it's kind of, I find it maybe more in the gum paste category where, it's an edible material, but people don't necessarily
so
consume them.
If people do eat it, it's not going to hurt them.
Right.
It's good. It's basically just potato starch, isn't it? Isn't that?
Yeah, it's potato starch, vegetable oil, and water.
Okay.
So
there you go.
So now, I don't know if my camera's not the greatest, so I don't know that if you can see the indentation that the skewer made. But when you're doing it, you will be able to see that on your own paper. And now I'm just going to basically cut them out following that indentation I made. I'm going to do this quickly.
So wafer paper is, if you bend it too hard, it can break, right?
Yes, yeah, it's interesting because it's fragile, but not super fragile, if that makes any sense.
Someone said if they wanted to print out the print on wafer paper, do you have to have a special printer?
Not necessarily a special printer, but you would need the retrofitted edible ink cartridges. And there's numerous sites out there that will have extensive lists of the different printers that they have the compatible cartridges for. So essentially, they're just the same printer that you would purchase for just regular printing, but you would use the edible ink cartridges and only the edible ink cartridges. You wouldn't want to interchange those. You would want to dedicate that printer to just printing edible papers.
Okay. So if they already have a printer that's an edible printer for, let's say, the icing sheets, that's the same type of printer that they would use.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Now that we have these pieces, 3 pieces cut out, we're going to flip them over. I guess I should have mentioned that there is a front and back to the paper. And I'm not sure that you'll be able to really see that difference here on the camera, but when you have it in your hand, you'll see that there's like a pitted texture side, and that's the back side of your paper. And then there's a smooth side, and that would be the side you print on, and the side that's showing mostly. So we'll work with flipping them over with the back side up, and this is where we'll apply our piping gel. To this piece here that will be essentially our bow. And we're going to cover the entire piece with the gel.
All right. There are some people that are wondering where to get wafer paper that's plain wafer paper. Do you sell the plain wafer paper on your website?
There is a small pack of white on there. You also can find it if you just did a quick Google search, because I know it depends on the area. I've heard of some people not being able to get it or having it shipped necessarily from Amazon. So maybe just a quick Google search would be best. But yes, there is some white on the website with the colored.
Okay. Actually, Bobby just put up a link to, here, let me show you guys. This is, if you guys want to find some wafer paper on Amazon, you can follow this link right here. It's cakefu.com/r/wafer paper Amazon. So that'll just take you over to Amazon where they have wafer paper. So, so yeah,
and then,
plain wafer paper. They don't have colored. So
yeah. And the other thing with that too is if they're looking through other sources, it's 0 grade or 0.22 millimeter thick is what I use. I know a lot of people ask about that too. So.
Okay.
Okay, so now that we have our piping gel all over the back of this piece, we are going to fold the ends in to meet at the middle. And now that we have the piping gel in there, you'll see that the paper has been conditioned enough to be able to do that without ripping or tearing or creasing too much. So it'll be a nice loop there.
So if you did loop that around without the piping gel, it would just...
It would crack. Well, I've tried it both ways, and initially I've got it to do this, but after a while it ends up drooping and just snapping right here where the crease is. So the piping gel is really key with this. And you can see me using the back of my paintbrush to kind of just anchor those points together there. And if you're finding you're doing this and they're not sticking, you can just add a little bit more piping gel in there to make it stick.
I've never used so much piping gel in my life.
I know. I go through it like crazy. Yeah, I love this stuff. And people ask a lot about shortening or water or any other thing, and those do work. I just personally love piping gel because it's never given me any issues. I like how you can put it on the paper and you can tell it doesn't bubble, doesn't warp the paper at all. It still gives you a really clean paper look rather than scrunching up. So, yeah, piping gel is my best friend. Okay, so for the back side of the bow, which you can see here, we have the color side or the top side up, and we're just going to apply a tiny bit of piping gel to attach the bow we just made.
Oh, how cute is that?
And you'll be able to see the line up. They'll line up. You know, it's not askew like that. They just meet up nicely from the template. And again, I'll just kind of anchor it with the back of my brush.
Isn't that that's just such a fun little decoration and easy to make.
Yeah, really easy and really quick and big impact. You know, you can use it on a lot of different things. These look really cute on cupcakes too.
I was just going to say the same thing. That's all you need for a little cupcake topper. Right. It's perfect.
Yeah, and very much more, you know, cost effective. I used to make these a lot in fondant when I was doing cupcakes in fondant. And, you know, they would take probably twice as much time and a little bit more money. So these are really quick and effective. So now we have the center piece that I put piping gel on the back and just kind of curled it over a little bit. And we're just going to wrap it around our bow here. Yeah.
So cute.
I should have made a bigger one. These smaller ones are a little bit more difficult if you have bigger fingers like me. So.
Well, and that's one thing about the piping gel is your fingers get sticky pretty easily.
Yes,
so.
Yes, very much. So I always have like a wet paper towel or something on hand to keep them clean. Okay. So there, it's just wrapped around, and you have a finished bow.
Perfect. Someone's asking, does the piping gel eventually dry?
It does, and that's actually a great thing. It adds just a little bit more stability to your finished project, and does give it a little bit of a barrier, you know, from moisture and stuff. So that's another reason why I love it.
Awesome. And look how cute that is, you guys. Oh, how cute.
And I think this was the second to smallest size on the template. I think the largest one is somewhere around there. And then there's also like the little itty bitty one, which is really cute.
Awesome. We have a whole bunch of questions on just this bow. Can I ask you some questions?
Yes.
All right. So we have a question about can you put these on buttercream or will they melt?
Well, that's a good question. I get asked that a lot. I have put them on Swiss meringue. That's what I always use. And should I move it up to answer these? Is that a little bit better? And it does stay for like a few hours. I wouldn't decorate something like the day before and leave them on overnight and then deliver the next day. There's a big chance that they would end up like starting to wilt. So the other way to kind of do that is you could put like a little fondant button on the back of them, so it gives it like a little bit of a barrier between the buttercream and the bow, and that would help too with that.
Okay, very cool. I'm going to pull this up again. There are people asking again about where to go and find your printed wafer paper, and here we go. There you go. Oh, that's the wrong one. Let me get it up. That's the wrong one too. Hang on. Sorry. Here you go. That's the link to the training. Okay, we'll get this right. There we go. There you go. If you want to check out Stevie's colored wafer paper, the printed wafer paper, another question they had is, can you actually paint on the wafer paper, or can you airbrush it, you know, that kind of thing?
Yeah, you can airbrush it. I don't usually do that just because I'm usually under a time crunch, and it's a lot easier for me just to run it through the printer because that's what I have. So, but yeah, you can definitely airbrush it. I just suggest doing multiple light coats if you're trying to get a darker color rather than going at it with a really heavy hand, because it will, you know, warp the paper since wafer paper has some issues with water and moisture. And then as far as painting on it, you can. Again, you have to be really careful with how much you're applying at one time, because it can't eat through the paper. You can also dry brush with luster dust on it. It gives a little bit more of like a watercolor effect to it, but it will color the paper that way as well.
Very cool. Okay. Let's see. We have a question about the piping gel. Do you have a recipe for piping gel? Is there a brand that you use? Anything specific?
I don't have a recipe for it. I actually use Linea's. I don't know if you can see this. But I've used Americolor. I've used the Wilton kind you can get at Michael's. I like this one because right out of the jar, it's like the really good consistency that I like. It's not too moist, like it's not too wet. And sometimes the Americolor gel is a little bit more wet than this one is. But to remedy that, you can leave the top off of it for like a day, and it kind of firms up a little bit and gives you a better consistency. So, but I never really push one particular product because they all work just as well.
Okay, great. All right. I guess we are at a point where we can move on. Okay. We just had a whole bunch of questions all at once. I was like, okay, let's
to be expected, I think.
Yeah.
With new stuff, sometimes, you know, people are always curious. Okay, so now we're going to try to do this little ruffly guy here. It's just a little, you know, ruffles are always popular and big. And he's on a fondant back, so you could use him for a lot of different applications too. Mm-hmm. And to do that, I did cut out a small disc. This is with an 1.25 inch round cutter. It's about a quarter inch thick. And we do want that thickness because we'll be pushing the paper actually into the fondant. So to get the ruffles, I actually just cut 3 squares out. They can be any size depending on how large, you know, of a ruffle that you want. I'm going to do probably these are about 3-inch squares, and you can tell I do a lot of freehand cutting. I don't necessarily get a ruler and measure everything out personally. I like kind of the, you know, how it comes out different every time. I'm okay with that. So now I'm just going to cut a scalloped circle out of my square. And it doesn't have to be perfect at all. And people always ask me, why do I start with a square if I'm trying to cut a circle? And I just find that's the easiest way for me to do it. It's really difficult for me to actually cut a circle and then try to scallop it. So the square gives me kind of some parameters to keep my circle within a certain size. So, so I'll do that. Okay, so we're going to, again, flip them over so the front smooth side is down and the rough side is up. And I'm going to apply piping gel to the entire surface of all 3 of these at the same time. And it's a fairly light coat. I haven't found that too much is ever an issue. I mean, obviously you wouldn't want huge globs because it just would be a big mess. But I haven't had it necessarily affect the paper too badly. So a thin coat, but you don't have to be too worried about how much. It's another reason why I like this versus water, because with water you really would have to pay attention to.
You do have to really.
What you're slopping. Yeah, with this you just slop it on and you're done. So.
Yes, I have done wafer paper with water to do kind of a sculpted leaf.
Right.
And it, you know, if you get it too wet, it can just completely melt.
Yeah, and you've got to start all over. Yeah, so with the piping gel, it kind of helps with that. You can be a little bit more careless with it, I suppose is the word. Yep. I'm also going to apply some piping gel to my fondant back here. And this I just cut recently. I wouldn't suggest doing this with a dry piece because, again, like I said, we're going to kind of push the wafer paper into it, so you do want it to not be completely firm. Okay, so I'm going to pick up my circle here and just squish it up. And I don't have like a specific technique on how to do that. I'm just kind of gathering the paper into a point at the bottom here. And then I'm going to fold it over slightly so it kind of gives me a flat surface. When I have that flat surface, I'm just going to add it to my fondant. Let me get best angles here. Fondant back with the point sticking out to the outside of the circle, and the reason for that is just so I can get my finger in there and kind of anchor it. Just kind of push that over. And we can do that with the other 2 here. Again, just kind of squishing it to a point. You can see too how the piping gel, I mean, if you were to do this without anything on it, you know, it just would crumble and crack in your hands. So again, piping gel really helps with that. So folding it over, just fitting it in next to the other one and anchoring it. Now we have one little spot open on this side. And same thing here. And you could apply these, you know, without putting them on the fondant directly to your cake, but I like having the control of having a bunch of these and being able to place them this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then you can just take those little bunches and put them wherever you want.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And then since the whole piece has piping gel in it, I do kind of squeeze, you know, the ones next to it together to try to anchor them a little bit to each other. And then that's it. Really simple. These are good for filling spaces, like between other flowers, or like I said, you can do a whole cake in them, like a whole tier in them. They'd be really cute. And they look good on cupcakes also.
Awesome. Okay, and I'm going to show really fast the cake again, so you guys can see this in application. I just love it. I love it. I love it. It's so current. I think it's just so, yeah, perfect and current and modern. And but yeah, you can see the little puffy things, and you can see the bows, and they just make such a really pretty light arrangement.
Yeah, it just gives it some texture without being too heavy. That was like really my first inclination using wafer paper. I was looking for something a little bit lighter visually, but still gives you, you know, like texture and some fun stuff. So
yeah. So now we're going to move on to this big one, right? You're going to teach this one also. That's so cool.
This one here, and this one I am using pattern paper, and this flower is actually in the Craftsy class. The only difference is this kind of fringy center here. That I added to it. So I'll show you this one. Again, here's just a sheet.
So these are the sheets right here that you have on your website?
Yes.
Oh.
I don't know if this pattern's up there yet, but there are other ones, I believe.
Very cool.
And so with this, I'm going to think of having these already cut out, but I'm just going to, again, get myself some squares. And for this one, I'm going to have 5 larger petals and 4 medium petals. And the squares don't have to be perfectly square or exactly the same, just, you know, general square. Approximately the same as each other.
All right. I really do love the patterns of these papers. Especially combined. They're very, very cute.
Yes, I like mixing. I did that a lot when I was in the design industry. So that's definitely one thing that has carried over into my cakes.
Mm-hmm. I can
sometimes
see that.
People get it and sometimes people don't, but that's okay. Sometimes I think it's crazy, but I like it. So.
Oh, I think it's totally. It really is. I am going back to it again, but you can really see the design style, your background in what you do. I love it.
Okay, so now I have my 4 medium size and larger ones, and usually with this I'll do 1/4 inch increments, where, you know, say if this was a 3-inch square, then I would try to get this next size down as close to 2 3/4 as possible. Because that just gives you a nice differentiation between your petals. So with these ones, I am going to cut actually all 5 sheets together because I know right now I have a really sharp scissor and I know this paper is pretty well conditioned. It's not really dried out. It's brand new paper, so I can cut them all at once without getting frayed edges. Sometimes if your paper is dry, you can't do this many at once. You can only do 1 or 2 without getting the jagged edge. So I have my whole stack of my larger petals, and I'm going to essentially try to make a teardrop shape in my paper here. And like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect because flowers are not perfect. And they look better, a little bit different. And so you can see you get a large teardrop shape. And we're going to cut about 1/4 inch up to maybe actually even a 1/2 inch slit at the bottom here. Awesome. And that's going to help us shape our petal.
I wanted to jump in really fast. You guys have about 1 more minute. If you haven't entered the giveaway, it's down below. So if you haven't entered, hurry and do that. You've got like 10 seconds left.
Go.
Yeah. Hurry and enter.
Oops, sorry, like that on the screen. Okay, so I did the teardrop shape and the slit on both sides. I also had, again, cut out 1 1/4 inch round fondant back and about 1/4 inch. This one might be a little bit less thickness. We're going to flip these all over. And if your work surface starts to get sticky, because it will, because piping gel will be everywhere, I just take a wet paper towel, damp paper towel, and then also make sure you go back and dry it. You don't want any water left.
Perfect.
All right. So flip them all over. And for this, we are not going to cover the entire petal, but just maybe the bottom 1/4 of the petal with a little bit of piping gel. The bottom being the part where it's the point of the teardrop and where the slit is. And I'll do all of them at once. And this depends, either doing them at once or in series. That will depend on how big your flower is. If you're doing a lot of petals, I wouldn't suggest doing them all, because by the time you get done, your first ones would probably be dry. But in this case, we just have a few, so it should be fine. A little bit of piping gel on the fondant back. And then we're going to start with our largest petals and place them on the outside of our circle. And to cup our petal, we are going to fold that slit. I fold them right side over left, which I know obviously will be backwards, I think, here. So right over left, and just pinch it, and you can see how it cups the petal, gives you, a rounded shape. And depending on how tight you fold these, will be how cupped your petal will be. And for the outside, we don't want them too cupped, so just a nice, just a nice little overlap with a nice small curve.
Perfect.
And then I'm going to attach it just to the edge of the circle. I don't know if you can see. We're going to do that with all of them, overlapping as we set them down just slightly over the previous petal that we put down there. I'll go around the whole circle with these, doing that.
Perfect. So again, I know that you said this when you first started this flower, but there are people asking about this particular print. You said you don't have this up on your website yet?
I don't think so. I don't think that it is.
Okay, but you will have it. You will have it available. Is that because they are loving this?
Yeah. Maybe I do need to, since if there's demand for it. Yes, we will try and get this one up.
There are quite a few requests. So.
Okay. Okay, so again, with the next petals, we'll do the right over left to cup, and just a little bit more of an overlap to get it a little bit tighter of a petal. And when we set them down inside here, let's see, we're going to overlap the seams, just as you would, when you're making the gum paste flower or any other flower. And do that with all 4 petals.
Do you have a name for these flowers, or?
Well, not really. This one in the Craftsy class is called the Stylized Ranunculus. And I'm only hesitant to say that it does have some quality similar in terms of, the rounded petals and stuff, but all of these ones in particular are really just meant to look like a paper flower. They're really not supposed to be botanically correct in any way, obviously, they're not. So
hard to name them.
It's hard for me to name them. I usually save my more rounded one. Yeah. So. So here it is finished with all those petals in there. And if we have time, I can do the center real quick. Are you still?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. I think we have some time left, and I think everyone would love to see it. So.
Okay. For the center, it's just going to be this little fringy guy here. And I cut 2 strips. And this is a good use for your scraps, because you'll have a lot of scraps from making these things. And so I just happen to have a little polka dot piece and a pink piece left over. And these are about 3/4 of an inch to maybe a 1/2 inch in width, and then about 6, maybe 7 inches long. And I'm just going to hold them together and line them up while I make a bunch of little cuts in them. The thickness of how far I'm going here, I'm not really being particular about that. I just want a little bit of a fringe. They do make scissors, I believe, that are called like fringe scissors. And they have like multiple blades. You could cut, 4 strips at a time or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Try to get
that would be convenient for
that. I might have to invest in those. Yeah, I just go all the way down. And when I'm cutting, I'm not cutting all the way to the bottom. You can tell I'm probably leaving about, I don't know, 1/4 of the width of the paper left. You don't want to cut all the way down because you still want your little pieces to be attached. You can tell I'm not trying to be exact by any means.
Yeah, well. Yeah.
I could sit here all day trying to make them exactly the same width apart.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing about flowers is they're not supposed to be perfect, so it's all good. Right?
I know, very forgiving and nice. And then I did leave maybe about a 1/2 inch, 1/4 of an inch of blank paper here. And that'll help us anchor it once we roll it up. Again, I'm going to flip them over and add piping gel just to the bottom part where the fringe is not. That little space that you left at the bottom. That's where we want to apply our gel to. I keep creeping out of the screen here.
That's easy to do.
Yeah. It's a little bit of an awkward way to go about working.
Okay, someone's asking, can you use wafer paper punches?
Oh,
or paper punches.
Paper punches, yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's something that is in your Craftsy class. I purchased and watched your Craftsy class because I thought it was awesome. But yes, there are. She shows how to do stuff like that in her Craftsy class. So it's definitely. I would highly recommend, the Craftsy class.
Yeah, it does show. So it does show the flower working on now, aside from the center part, but it does have a lot of other wafer paper techniques. It's not just flowers. So if anything, it just kind of will spur, hopefully, your inspiration to kind of come up with other ways to use it. Yeah, because there's so much. I'm nowhere even near knowing like everything there is to do with it. Like I feel like there's just so much. So many options out there for it, and I'm kind of excited that people are using it now to be able to see what everyone's coming up with, Okay, so I took those 2 fringy pieces after I put the piping gel, and I actually have laid them on top of each other. And I'm going to then, again, with my fancy skewer, you can do this with your finger, but I just find it's a little bit quicker to just help you wrap it around. So just roll it up. It's going to want to move and, not match up perfectly. And again, that's totally okay. Just going to roll it as much as possible. Okay. And there should be enough piping gel on there for it to stick onto itself here at the end, but if not, if mine's not sticking that well, I'll just add a little bit more. Okay. And then with these ones, I sometimes will just leave them on here to dry because what we're going to do now is want to kind of fringe these out, and with it still being wet, it makes it a little bit more difficult to work with. I'll go ahead and try to do it for you guys here.
All right, someone's asking, in your wafer paper class on Craftsy, do you show how to cover the cake tiers with wafer paper, like with this cake you showed?
To wrap them, I do show how to do die cut wrapped tiers, which is with those scrapbooking punches and stuff we were talking about. Not solid sheets, but essentially it's the same
process.
Thing,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and a little bit more intense to have the die cut one.
Yes, yeah. So if you can do that, then you can definitely
Yes,
do
exactly.
the plain sheets.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, in a perfect world, you would have had to dry one of these and then been able to kind of fluff this out a little bit more. Like you could see in the other flower, they really kind of were open. But for this purpose, it's still a little bit tacky. So, and to attach it, I'll just, again, use piping gel because I use piping gel for everything. But you could use royal icing or melting chocolate if you wanted, to use that. That would work just fine as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I am just going to squish it down into the center here, and it will take a little bit of time to hold. So I would just set this aside and let it dry for a little bit. And then on the other one, you can see there's just a little ball of fondant that I shoved down in there to cover that little gap.
Mm-hmm.
You could use stamens, which would be kind of cute, or a sugar pearl or something like that to finish it off.
Very cute.
And that's it.
Love it. I love it. Right, so we have a question about storage and shelf life. How do these last for a long time? Is there a certain way to store them?
They do actually last for quite a bit. I don't have like a definitive answer for that because I feel like your climate and where you are is going to kind of affect that. I've had ones that I've had here at home that I'll bring home with me rather than leaving at the kitchen, and I've had them, I don't know, for over 6 months just sitting out. But I know if they are in like an airtight container out of sunlight and away from moisture, I think 6 months isn't easy, if not longer, honestly.
Yeah.
They do get a little bit brittle regardless, so you would have to be a little bit more delicate with them when you're using them after that extended period of time. But yeah, I think they still would hold up.
Yeah. Well, I know just a lot of wafer paper packages, they're just, plastic covered. And so, it's hard to, keep them sealed and protected. So
yeah, I usually put mine in the bigger Ziploc bags if you can find them after I open them up, because just to help. I've also had them where I just leave them in that package that they come in and they've been fine. But you also see that they have expiration dates on them too. So it's usually about a year, I think, for the paper itself.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, I live in a really dry area. I don't know about you, but we live in a really dry area, and so they can get pretty brittle fairly quickly. So I mean, you wanna make sure that if you are in a really dry area, you want to try and keep them, a little bit protected. Same if you live in a really wet area, right? Because if you have too much moisture, it's just gonna.
Yeah, I know. I did find out that I think I'm in the perfect climate I'm in San Diego.
Oh, good.
So it's usually pretty dry, but not dry like where you are, and it doesn't rain, or it's not too moist. Even on the coast, it's not that bad. Yes. I did find that out when I had gone to Denver. Craftsy, oh gosh, it was so dry, and I was like, what is my paper doing? It was a big learning experience for me.
Yeah. Well, there definitely is a difference. One thing that I found to kind of combat that dryness is I have a steamer for for my cakes, but just a fabric steamer, and I just turned on the steamer. I had it far enough away from my project that it didn't melt everything, but it put a little bit of moisture into the air so that my project didn't it worked out really well that way.
Oh, good.
And so for those of you that are in really dry climates like me, there's a tip for you. Yeah, so I saw that when you were doing the Craftsy class, you were talking about the weather being so dry in Denver, and I was like, yep, I have that problem too.
I had no idea. I don't know why I hadn't even thought of it. I just assumed. I guess I assumed because it's it's a paper product, and I know how moisture does affect it, but I had not thought of just being in a room that was dry, or in a climate that was that dry, that would make a big difference, but it does.
Awesome. Okay. Someone's asking, can this wafer paper be embossed? Like
Well,
using a Cuttlebug or something like that.
you know, I've never tried a Cuttlebug. I actually do have one, and I've never attempted to use it on here. I have used like double-sided silicone veiners for like leaves and stuff, like putting
Mm-hmm.
piping gel on the paper and then putting it in there, and it holds up. It, you know, you have to be a little bit delicate with it because you can, if some of those ridges are really pointy, it'll
Mm-hmm.
crack it. So that now that I say that, I think with the Cuttlebug, because some of those prints do have pretty sharp indentations, you know, like the prints
Mm-hmm.
themselves are maybe too sharp, but maybe with a light touch it might work. I don't know from experience with that.
Yeah, I've never tried that either, but
Yeah.
from my experience, and my humidity, you know,
Yeah.
lack of humidity, I would say if you do want to try it, I would try putting the piping gel on it first.
Yeah.
Let the piping gel dry a little bit and then run it through. You're gonna have a sticky backing when you're done.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I've been working on more realistic or botanically correct flowers and veining and stuff like that, so you can get some texture to them, but it's, you know, I think the Cuttlebug might be a little bit too sharp. I'm not sure. That's a good.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to know.
Yeah, it's something we'll have to try out. Well, and I know that there is the Icing Images has the Sweet Accent, which it's one of those tools that it's a cutter and an embosser kind of tool.
Yeah.
So I have one of those. Maybe I'll go home and try it out on it and see how that works.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys know. So, okay. All right. Well, I think that I'm trying to scroll through and see any more questions that there might be. Oh, someone was asking, do you do live classes ever?
I do. I haven't for a little bit now just because of being busy and stuff, but I have a few things coming up. Nothing here. I'll be in Spain the end of August, beginning of September.
Ooh,
and
exciting.
yes, I'm excited about that. And I believe ISIS, there's a demo class that I'll be doing. When is that? August, maybe? I don't remember the date on that. And then
yeah, it's in August sometime.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then I do private instruction here in San Diego also. So, and I know that we're trying to work out a few other dates of travel classes too. So that I'll hopefully eventually get that on the website once all that's taken care of.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Stevie. You have shared so much information today. This is one I'm sure people will come back and keep watching.
I hope so. Thank you for having me.
And for more different flowers and things. She, like I said, she goes over borders, putting things on cakes, punching things out with, using paper punches, things like that. So check out her Craftsy class for sure. Well, someone's asking really fast, where is IC's? That is New Mexico, right?
Yes, Albuquerque, I believe.
Yes, I should be going this year.
You're not?
I don't know. I haven't made plans yet. I'm like, oh.
You still have time. I think you should.
I do. Well, usually I'll, submit to teach a class, and so I'll be teaching, and so I don't need to, it's in my plans. Right. Yeah. But I didn't get submitted for a class this year, and so I'm not teaching, and so I'm just like, am I going? I should be going. So, but yeah, I would recommend the ICs for you guys. So again, thank you so much, Stevie, for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I guess we will see you guys all another time, hopefully this weekend. Yay! Okay. All right, have a good day. Bye.
Bye, everyone.